What happens when you finally escape an abusive pack in the dead of night, running through the forest with nothing but the clothes on your back and a desperate hope for freedom, only to find the most powerful alpha in the werewolf realm standing at the territory border like he's been waiting for you specifically? Florence Marion had planned her escape for 3 months, memorizing patrol schedules, gathering supplies, waiting for the new moon when her pack's guards would be at their weakest. She'd endured 2 years of being treated as nothing more than a blood donor for her pack's injured warriors, 2 years of being told her weak healing abilities made her worthless for anything except being used, 2 years of watching the pack's beta, Lysander Grimm, look at her like she was property he'd eventually claim whether she wanted it or not. Tonight was supposed to be her liberation. She'd slipped out of the Ravenhollow Pack's compound at 2 a.m., scaled the perimeter fence, and run through the dark forest with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might give out. She'd made it to the neutral territory border, the line between Ravenhollow lands and the unclaimed wilderness where rogues and outcasts survived. Freedom was literally 1 step away. And then she saw him. Paul Perez, Alpha King of the Shadowvale Dominion, the most powerful werewolf in 5 territories, stood at the border crossing like a sentinel. He was alone. No guards, no entourage, no sign that he was there for any official reason. Just standing in the moonlight, his eyes reflecting silver, looking directly at Florence like he'd been waiting for her. Like he knew she'd come. Like this meeting wasn't a chance but destiny. "You're late," he said calmly, as if they'd had an appointment Florence had somehow forgotten. "I expected you 20 minutes ago based on Ravenhollow's patrol rotation." Florence froze, every instinct screaming contradictory messages. Run back to Ravenhollow's terrible safety. Run forward into unknown danger. Stay absolutely still and hope this was a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. Paul Perez shouldn't know who she was. She was nobody, a weak healer from a minor pack, completely beneath the notice of an alpha king who ruled territory that included 6 major packs and controlled werewolf politics across the northern regions. But he was looking at her like he knew exactly who she was. Like he'd been tracking her movements. Like her escape attempt wasn't a surprise but an inevitability he'd been preparing for. "I don't understand," Florence whispered. Why are you? "Because 3 months ago, you accidentally healed one of my scouts during a skirmish on Ravenhollow's border," Paul interrupted, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made submission feel instinctive. "You thought you were healing a Ravenhollow warrior. You didn't realize he was mine. But when your healing magic touched him, I felt it through our pack bond. Felt your power. Felt what you really are beneath the suppressions Ravenhollow placed on you." Florence's breath caught. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm just a weak healer, you're a luminary," Paul said flatly. "The rarest healing bloodline in werewolf history. Your abilities don't just heal injuries, they can cure curses, break dark magic, and regenerate damage that should be permanent. Ravenhollow has been suppressing your true nature since you were a child, using you as a basic blood donor when you should be one of the most valuable wolves alive." He stepped closer, and Florence instinctively stepped back. "The night you healed my scout, I started investigating. Found out Ravenhollow acquired you from an orphanage 12 years ago. Found out they've been dosing you with suppression herbs to keep your abilities locked at basic level. Found out their beta has been planning to forcibly mate you to gain control of whatever power you can access." Another step closer. "I've been waiting 3 months for you to run, Florence. Because wolves like you don't survive places like Ravenhollow. You either escape or you're destroyed. I gambled that you were smart enough to choose to escape." Florence's mind was reeling. Luminary bloodline? Suppressions? The Alpha King investigating her? "Why are you here?" she managed. "If you know all this, why didn't you just demand Ravenhollow hand me over? You're Alpha King, they'd have to comply, because demanding you would have triggered a political crisis, given Ravenhollow time to hide evidence of what they've been doing, and made you a prize to be traded rather than a person making a choice. Paul's eyes were intense in the moonlight. I'm here because I'm offering you a choice, Florence. Come with me to Shadowvale. Let me remove the suppressions. Discover what you really are. And in return, use your abilities to help me break a curse that's been killing my pack for 2 generations. And if I say no? Then I'll give you supplies, point you toward the safest rogue territory, and let you disappear. But Florence? His voice dropped lower. You ran away from Ravenhollow because you knew staying would destroy you. Running into the wilderness alone will kill you just as surely. At least with me, you'll find out what you were meant to be before the end. Florence looked behind her at the dark forest representing Ravenhollow's territory. Looked ahead at the Alpha King who somehow knew she'd be here tonight. Looked at the neutral wilderness where rogues barely survived. She'd thought escape would mean freedom. Instead, it meant choosing between certain death and uncertain fate with a powerful alpha who'd been waiting for her like he knew she'd come. How could he have known? Why would an Alpha King care about one suppressed healer from a minor pack? And what did it mean that he'd been waiting 3 months for her to run? Florence made a choice that would change everything. I'll come with you, she decided. But I want answers. All of them. Starting with how you knew I'd be here tonight. Paul's smile was slight but genuine. Then come. We have a long drive back to Shadowvale, and I have 3 months of investigation to explain. As Florence crossed the border into neutral territory, leaving Ravenhollow behind forever, she felt the strangest sensation, like invisible strings she hadn't known existed were loosening around her chest, making breathing easier than it had been in years. She'd run away expecting nothing but desperate survival. Instead, she'd found an Alpha King who'd been waiting. And something told her that coincidence had nothing to do with it. Think this is just a powerful alpha rescuing a damsel in distress? You're missing the conspiracy. Because what Florence doesn't know is that she's not just luminary, she's the last descendant of the Ravenhollow Pack's original ruling family, stolen as a child and sold to the current pack leadership to hide the coup that killed her parents. Hit subscribe, because this story is about to reveal that sometimes running away is actually running toward your destiny, sometimes the alpha waiting isn't coincidence but careful planning, and sometimes being nobody's healer means you're actually the most powerful wolf anyone's been searching for. The drive to Shadowvale territory took 3 hours. Florence sat in the passenger seat of Paul's unmarked SUV, watching the dark landscape blur past, trying to process the fact that she was in a vehicle with the Alpha King who'd somehow predicted her escape down to the 20-minute window. Paul drove in silence for the first 30 minutes, giving Florence time to catch her breath, to let the adrenaline of escape fade into exhaustion. Finally, Florence broke the silence. You said you'd explain. How did you know I'd run tonight specifically? I didn't know the exact night, Paul admitted, his eyes on the road. But I knew it would be soon. You've been gathering supplies for 3 months, small amounts that wouldn't be noticed missing. Medical supplies, non-perishable food, a backpack hidden in the forest outside Ravenhollow's perimeter. My scouts have been watching. You've been spying on me for 3 months? I've been protecting you for 3 months, Paul corrected. Making sure Ravenhollow's beta didn't move on you before you were ready to run. Making sure the pack's alpha didn't suddenly decide to increase security. Making sure you stayed alive long enough to make your escape. Florence processed this. Why? Why would an Alpha King care what happens to one healer from a pack you don't even directly rule? Paul was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried weight. Because 2 generations ago, my great-grandfather offended a dark witch. She cursed our bloodline. Every Alpha King since has died before age 40 from the curse consuming them. My father died at 38. My grandfather at 39. I'm 35, Florence. I have maybe 5 years left unless I break this curse. And you think I can break it because I'm, what did you call it? Luminary? I know you can break it. Because luminary healing doesn't just fix physical damage, it purifies. Removes dark magic. Restores what's been corrupted. Paul's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I've spent 10 years searching for any luminary descendant. The bloodline was thought extinct. Then 3 months ago, you healed my scout, and I felt your power through our pack bond. Felt the signature that only luminary healing carries. But you said I was suppressed. How could you feel my power if it was locked away? Suppression herbs can't completely eliminate luminary abilities, they can only dampen them. When you healed my scout, you used more power than basic healing requires. The suppression couldn't contain it completely, and the overflow leaked through. Paul glanced at her. That's how I knew what you were. And that's when I started investigating everything about you. Florence felt exposed. Watched. What did you find? That you were brought to Ravenhollow 12 years ago. That the pack's records claim you were an orphan they took in out of charity. That you've been used as a blood donor and basic healer despite showing abilities that should have developed into something much stronger. That their beta, Lysander Grimm, has been circling you for the past year like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. He wanted to mate me, Florence said quietly. Said it was inevitable. That I should be grateful he was willing to overlook how weak I was. He wanted to mate you because he knows what you are, Paul said bluntly. Or at least suspects. A forced mate bond would give him access to your abilities once the suppressions were removed. He could use you as a weapon or a tool. The thought made Florence's stomach turn. I was never going to let him touch me. That's why I started planning my escape. I know. That's why I've been waiting. Paul's voice softened fractionally. You were never going to survive Ravenhollow, Florence. Whether through Lysander claiming you, or the pack working you to death, or your suppressions eventually causing permanent damage. Running was your only option. And you just happened to be waiting at the border when I ran? I've been waiting at that border for every new moon for 3 months, Paul admitted. New moon provides the best cover for escape, Ravenhollow's patrols are weakest, and the darkness provides more concealment. I gambled that you'd choose a new moon. And I gambled that you'd choose the eastern border because it's closest to neutral territory. Florence stared at him. You've been standing in the forest every new moon for 3 months on the chance I'd escape? Yes. That's insane. What if I hadn't run? What if I'd stayed? Then I would have waited another month. And another. Until you either ran or I was forced to take more direct action. Paul's eyes met hers briefly before returning to the road. I told you, Florence. Wolves like you don't survive places like Ravenhollow. It was only a question of when you'd realize it. Florence looked out the window at the dark landscape. What happens when we get to Shadow Vale? I have a healer who specializes in suppression magic. She'll examine you, determine what herbs Ravenhollow has been using, and create a purge protocol to remove them from your system safely. Paul's voice was clinical, professional. The removal process will take approximately a week. It's not pleasant, your body has been suppressed for 12 years. Releasing that much contained power at once will be painful and disorienting. And after that? After that, we'll see what you can really do. If your luminary abilities are as strong as I think they are, you should be able to identify the curse structure and develop a strategy to break it. And if I can't? If my abilities aren't strong enough? Paul was quiet for a long moment. Then I die in 5 years, my pack's alpha bloodline ends, and Shadow Vale falls into chaos fighting over succession. But at least you'll be free from Ravenhollow and able to make your own choices about your future. The casual way he said it, like his death was just a logistical problem rather than a tragedy, made Florence's chest tighten. "You're very calm about potentially dying," she observed. "I've had 10 years to accept it. My father had his entire life to accept it. This curse has been killing my family for 2 generations. I'm just the latest in line." Paul's voice carried no self-pity, just resignation. "If you can break it, you'll save not just me but every future Shadowvale Alpha. If you can't, at least I'll have tried everything possible." Florence studied his profile in the dashboard lights. Paul Perez was handsome in the way powerful alphas usually were, sharp features, strong build, the kind of presence that commanded attention. But there was something else too. Exhaustion beneath the authority. The weight of knowing his own death was coming and being unable to stop it. "How much time do I have?" Florence asked. "To remove the suppressions and learn to use my abilities and break your curse?" "As long as you need. The curse progresses slowly. I'm not in immediate danger." Paul's tone suggested he was being generous with the timeline. "But Florence? Ravenhollow will come looking for you. They'll realize you're gone by morning. And when they do, they'll search. I can protect you in Shadowvale, but you need to understand, running away from them means you can never go back." "I don't want to go back," Florence said immediately. "Whatever happens with your curse, whatever I can or can't do with my abilities, I'm never going back to Ravenhollow." "Good," Paul said. "Because what I didn't tell you yet is that Ravenhollow isn't just guilty of suppressing you. They're guilty of much worse." Florence's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean that 12 years ago, Ravenhollow didn't just take in an orphan out of charity. They acquired you specifically because someone sold you to them. Someone who knew what you were and wanted you hidden and controlled." "Who? Who would sell a child?" Paul's expression was grim. "That's what we're going to find out. Because whoever sold you to Ravenhollow is connected to the curse killing my pack. And finding them might be the key to breaking it permanently." Florence felt cold. Her entire life at Ravenhollow, the suppressions, the abuse, the isolation, hadn't been random cruelty. It had been deliberate. Orchestrated. "You think whoever sold me is the same person who cursed your family?" "I think the 2 events are connected. I just don't know how yet." Paul pulled off the highway onto a smaller road. "But we're going to find out. Together." They drove in silence for another hour. Florence watched as the landscape changed from wilderness to maintained territory. Saw the signs marking Shadowvale borders. Saw patrol guards who saluted as Paul's vehicle passed. Finally, they pulled through massive gates into a compound that made Ravenhollow's facilities look like a rundown motel. Shadowvale's pack house was enormous, a modern building that somehow blended contemporary architecture with traditional pack aesthetics. Lights were on despite the late hour, and Florence saw wolves moving through the grounds with purpose. "Welcome to Shadowvale," Paul said, parking in a private garage. "Your new home, if you choose to stay after we deal with the curse." "And if I choose to leave after?" "Then I'll help you establish yourself wherever you want to go. Give you resources to build a new life. You're not a prisoner here, Florence. You're a guest who's helping me with a problem." Paul's eyes met hers. "But I hope you'll stay. Because I have a feeling that once you discover what you really are, you're not going to want to hide anymore." Florence followed Paul into the pack house, aware that she'd just traded one unknown for another. But at least this unknown came with answers. And she was tired of living with questions. Paul's healer was a woman named Odessa Nightshade who looked like she was in her 60s but moved with the energy of someone half that age. She examined Florence in a private medical suite, running tests that involved both modern equipment and what looked like very old magic. 12 years of continuous suppression, Odessa muttered, reviewing results with a grim expression. They've been dosing you with wolfsbane root extract, moonbell powder, and something I can't quite identify. A custom blend designed to keep your luminary abilities locked at absolute minimum output. Can you remove it? Paul asked from where he stood by the door. I can purge it. But Alpha, this is going to be rough. 12 years of suppression means her system has adapted to functioning at limited capacity. Releasing that all at once, Odessa shook her head. She's going to be very sick for several days while her body adjusts. How sick? Florence asked nervously. Fever, hallucinations, body pain, magical instability. Your healing abilities will activate randomly and uncontrollably until you learn to regulate them. You might accidentally heal things that don't need healing, or drain your energy completely trying to fix minor injuries. Odessa's voice was kind but honest. It's going to feel like dying for about a week. But you'll survive it. When do we start? Tomorrow morning. You need rest first. Your body is already stressed from the escape and the drive. Adding suppression purge on top of that could be dangerous. Odessa gestured to Paul. Get her settled in guest quarters. Make sure she eats and sleeps. We'll begin the purge at dawn. Paul nodded and led Florence through the pack house to a suite that was bigger than her entire room at Ravenhollow had been. This is yours for as long as you need it, Paul said. Private bathroom, fully stocked. Kitchen access if you want to cook, or packed dining hall if you prefer company. You're not confined here, explore the territory if you want. But Florence? Yes? Don't leave Shadowvale boundaries without an escort. Ravenhollow will be searching. And they won't be gentle if they find you. Florence nodded, too exhausted to argue. Paul left her alone, and Florence collapsed onto the bed, finally letting herself feel the weight of what she'd done. She'd escaped. Had run away from everything she'd known for 12 years. Had accepted help from an Alpha King who needed her abilities to break a death curse. And tomorrow, she'd start the process of becoming whatever she was really meant to be. Florence fell asleep wondering if she'd made the right choice. The purge began at dawn. Odessa administered a foul-tasting potion that made Florence gag, then had her lie down in the medical suite while the herbs started working. This is going to flush the suppressions from your system over the next 12 hours, Odessa explained. You'll feel it happening. Don't fight it, just let your body process and expel. Paul stayed, sitting in a chair by Florence's bed despite Odessa suggesting he had other duties. I'll stay, he said simply. At least until the worst is over. The first hour was uncomfortable but manageable, nausea and mild cramping. The second hour brought fever and chills that made Florence shake uncontrollably. By the third hour, Florence was hallucinating. Seeing memories that couldn't be real, a beautiful house, a woman with her same dark hair singing lullabies, a man who called her little light and made her laugh. Those might be real memories surfacing, Odessa said when Florence tried to describe them. Suppression herbs don't just lock abilities, they can bury memories associated with magical trauma. If you were very young when the suppression started, your mind might have hidden early childhood to protect itself. The fourth hour brought pain, every bone and muscle aching like Florence was being torn apart from the inside. She barely noticed when Paul moved from the chair to sit on the edge of her bed, his hand gripping hers, his alpha presence somehow making the pain more bearable. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know this is hard. But it will pass. Tell me about the curse, Florence gasped, desperate for distraction from the agony. How did it start? Paul was quiet for a moment, then spoke. My great-grandfather, Alpha King Tobias Perez, fell in love with a witch. Her name was Seraphine. She was beautiful and powerful and completely inappropriate for an Alpha King to marry. But he loved her anyway. What happened? Tobias's council demanded he reject her. Said a witch could never be accepted as Luna, that it would weaken pack standing, that he needed to marry a werewolf from a prestigious bloodline. So Tobias, being young and stupid and easily influenced, broke Seraphine's heart and married someone his council approved of. Let me guess, Florence said through gritted teeth. Seraphine didn't take rejection well? She cursed the Shadowvale Alpha bloodline. Said that since Tobias chose duty over love, every Alpha king in his line would die before age 40, consumed by the very duty they valued more than happiness. Paul's voice was bitter. She was thorough. The curse is woven through our bloodline magic. It feeds on pack bonds, grows stronger the more responsibility we take on, and can't be removed by conventional means. Has anyone tried to break it? My great-grandfather tried. Hired mages, consulted with witches, attempted every counter-curse he could find. Nothing worked. My grandfather tried. My father tried. All of them died exactly as Seraphine promised, before age 40, consumed by curse magic that turned their own alpha power against them. And now you're trying. Now I'm trying. With the help of a luminary healer who might be the first person with abilities strong enough to actually purify curse magic instead of just countering it. Paul's hand tightened on hers. If you can break this curse, Florence, you'll save not just me but every future alpha in my bloodline. We'll finally be free of Seraphine's revenge. Florence wanted to ask more, but the fifth hour hit and the pain intensified beyond her ability to speak. She spent the next 7 hours drifting between consciousness and fever dreams, aware of Paul's presence beside her, aware of Odessa checking vitals periodically, aware that her body was fundamentally changing. By the 12th hour, when the purge finally completed, Florence felt like she'd been hollowed out and refilled with something that didn't quite fit. How do you feel? Odessa asked. Like I died and got resurrected by someone who didn't quite remember how I was supposed to work, Florence croaked. That's normal, Odessa assured her. Your luminary abilities are active now, but you don't have control yet. That will come with practice. For now, rest. Let your body adjust to functioning without suppressions for the first time in 12 years. Paul stood, finally releasing Florence's hand. I'll check on you tomorrow. If you need anything, there are guards outside who'll get a message to me immediately. Thank you, Florence whispered. For staying. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Paul said simply. You're doing this to help me. The least I can do is be here while you suffer through the consequences. He left, and Florence fell into exhausted sleep. When she woke 16 hours later, the first thing she noticed was that everything felt different. She could sense the life force of plants in her room. Could feel the pack bonds connecting Shadowvale wolves even though she wasn't a pack. Could perceive injuries and illnesses in people walking past her suite. Her luminary abilities were active. And she had absolutely no idea how to control them. So Florence escaped Ravenhollow by literally running away into the night, brave, found the Alpha King casually waiting at the border like he'd been tracking her escape plans for months, suspicious, agreed to help break a generations-old curse because turning down an Alpha King seems unwise, survival instincts, and just survived 12 hours of magical detox that felt like dying multiple times, commitment. Also Paul held her hand through the worst of it, which seems significant, but nobody's discussing what that means for their professional "you help me not die, I help you not get murdered" arrangement. Subscribe now, because what comes after involves Florence's abilities activating at wildly inappropriate moments, Paul revealing he knows way more about her background than he's admitted, and both of them discovering that the curse and Florence's suppression are connected in ways that suggest someone's been playing them both for over a decade. The next 3 days were chaotic. Florence's luminary abilities activated randomly and without warning. She'd touch a door and accidentally try to heal the wood. She'd walk past injured guards and feel compelled to heal them whether they wanted it or not. She'd drained herself to exhaustion trying to fix a pack member's sprained ankle. "You're not regulating power output," Odessa explained during training session number 6. "Luminary healing should be controlled and precise. You're functioning like an open faucet, just pouring power at anything that registers as damaged." "I don't know how to control it," Florence said, frustrated. "It just happens." "Then we practice until it doesn't just happen. Until you decide when and how much power to use." Odessa placed a plant with damaged leaves on the table between them. "Heal this. But only use enough power to fix the damaged leaves, not the entire plant." Florence focused, trying to channel her healing abilities with precision instead of reflex. The plant exploded into bloom, growing 3 sizes and producing flowers that definitely weren't natural for its species. "That was too much," Odessa said dryly. "I noticed," Florence muttered. They practiced for hours. By the end of the day, Florence could heal the plant without making it mutate, though she still couldn't regulate power output precisely. "Progress," Odessa declared. "Tomorrow we work on curse identification. If you're going to break Alpha Paul's curse, you need to learn to see dark magic structures." That night, Florence ate dinner in the packed dining hall for the first time. She'd been avoiding it, feeling self-conscious about being the strange healer the Alpha King had brought home who couldn't control her abilities. But Paul had specifically requested she join pack meals to help her integrate. The dining hall was enormous, filled with wolves from all ranks eating together in casual atmosphere that was completely unlike Ravenhollow's rigid hierarchy. Florence got food and looked for somewhere to sit that wouldn't draw attention. "Over here," a voice called. A young woman with bright red hair waved Florence over to a table near the windows. "You're Florence, right? The luminary healer Alpha Paul brought in?" "That's me," Florence said cautiously. "I'm Sable Corvain, Pack Archivist. I've been dying to meet you. Luminary healers haven't existed in verified records for almost a century. You're basically a legend made flesh." Sable's enthusiasm was infectious. "Sit. Tell me everything. How do your abilities work? Can you actually cure dark magic? Is it true you can regenerate lost limbs?" Florence sat, slightly overwhelmed. "I don't actually know what I can do yet. I just got my abilities unsealed 3 days ago." "Right, the suppression removal. That must have been awful." Sable's expression turned sympathetic. "But hey, now you get to discover what you're capable of. That's exciting, right?" "It's terrifying," Florence admitted. "I spent 12 years being told I was weak and worthless. Now I'm supposed to be this rare, powerful bloodline? I don't even know how to process that." "Well, you've got time to figure it out. And pack support. We're all rooting for you to break the Alpha's curse." Sable leaned closer conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Paul really needs this. He's been searching for a solution for years. Having you here is the first hope we've had in a generation." The weight of expectation settled on Florence's shoulders. "What if I can't break it? What if my abilities aren't strong enough?" "Then at least you tried. That's more than anyone else has been able to do." Sable's voice was kind. "But I think you'll succeed. Paul's instincts about people are usually right. If he believes you can do this, you probably can." Over the next week, Florence settled into a routine. Mornings with Odessa, learning to control her luminary abilities and identify different types of magic. Afternoons practicing on pack members with various injuries and ailments. Evenings in the pack dining hall, slowly making friends with wolves who treated her like a person instead of a tool. And every few days, sessions with Paul where she attempted to examine the curse killing him. "I can see it," Florence said during their 4th examination session, her luminary sight showing her the dark magic woven through Paul's life force. It's like black threads wrapped around your alpha power, feeding on pack bonds and growing stronger the more responsibility you take on. Can you remove it? Paul asked. Not yet. It's too complex. If I just try to rip it out, it'll take your alpha power with it and probably kill you. Florence studied the curse structure carefully. I need to understand how it's anchored first. Figure out which threads to cut and which to leave intact until the structure collapses naturally. How long will that take? I don't know. Weeks? Months? Florence looked up at Paul, seeing the exhaustion beneath his alpha mask. How much time do we have before the curse accelerates? Hard to say. It's been progressing slowly for the past 5 years. But it could speed up at any time. Paul's voice was matter of fact. Do what you need to do, Florence. Take whatever time you require. Rushing and making mistakes will help no one. During their 6th session, Florence noticed something strange. There's a connection, she said, tracing the curse threads with her luminary sight. The curse isn't just woven through your bloodline, it's connected to something external. Like it's being fed or maintained by an outside source. Paul straightened. What kind of source? I don't know. I'd have to trace the connection to find out. But Paul? This means the curse isn't just old magic sitting dormant. Someone or something is actively sustaining it. Seraphine cursed my great-grandfather decades ago. She's long dead. Then someone else is maintaining her curse. Someone who wants to make sure Shadowvile's alpha bloodline keeps dying on schedule. Florence's voice was grim. We need to find that source. Because even if I manage to break the curse temporarily, it'll just reassert if someone's actively feeding it. Paul's expression went hard. Can you trace it? Follow the connection to whoever's maintaining it? Maybe. But it'll be dangerous. If they're actively sustaining the curse, they'll notice when I start interfering with it. Let them notice, Paul said coldly. I'm tired of being hunted by a curse I didn't earn. If someone's deliberately keeping it active, I want to know who and why. That night, Florence attempted to trace the curse connection. It was like following a thread through a maze, the connection wound through layers of magic, doubling back, hiding itself behind protective wards. But Florence's luminary abilities could see through deception. Could follow the true path beneath the camouflage. The connection led back to Ravenhollow territory. Florence gasped, breaking the trace. No. That's not possible. What did you find? Paul demanded. The curse maintenance connection leads to Ravenhollow Pack. Someone there has been actively sustaining the curse on your bloodline. Florence's mind was racing. Paul, this means. It means whoever suppressed you and whoever cursed my family are the same entity. Or at least working together. Paul's eyes were blazing. That's why you were sold to Ravenhollow 12 years ago. They needed a luminary close by to ensure the curse could never be broken. But that doesn't make sense. If they had me, why suppress my abilities? Why not just kill me? Because killing a luminary draws attention from other packs and magical authorities. But suppressing one and using them as a basic healer? That just looks like a pack maximizing limited resources. Paul began pacing. They hid you in plain sight. Kept you too weak to identify the curse, too controlled to help anyone who might threaten their interests. So what do? We spring their trap, Paul said grimly. We let them know you've been unsealed. We make them panic. And when they move against us, we identify exactly who in Ravenhollow has been maintaining the curse and eliminate them. Florence felt cold. You want to use me as bait. I want to force them into the open where we can fight them. Right now they're hidden, protected by Ravenhollow Pack sovereignty. But if they attack you on Shadow Vale territory, that's an act of war. And I'll have legal justification to dismantle whoever's responsible. And if they kill me before we can stop them? They won't, Paul said with absolute certainty. Because I'll be protecting you every moment. This is my territory, Florence. My pack. My rules. Anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through me first. Through their training sessions, Florence had gotten used to Paul's alpha authority. But this was different. This was personal protection, not professional courtesy. Why are you doing this? Florence asked quietly. Really doing this? You could have just demanded Ravenhollow hand me over months ago. Could have forced them to comply through Alpha King authority. Why did you wait for me to run? Why are you investing so much in keeping me safe? Paul was silent for a long moment. Because you deserved the choice to run. Deserved to escape on your own terms instead of being traded like property. His eyes met hers. And because after watching you for 3 months, I realized you weren't just a tool to break my curse. You were a person who'd been trapped and hurt and deserved better than what Ravenhollow gave you. Something shifted in the air between them. We're going to break this curse together, Paul said. We're going to expose whoever's been manipulating both our lives. And then you'll finally be free to choose what you want your future to look like. And what if what I want includes staying in Shadow Vale? Florence heard herself ask. Then I'd be honored to have you, Paul replied. Before either could say more, alarms blared through the pack house. Perimeter breach, Paul said, his entire demeanor shifting to combat mode. Multiple hostiles approaching from the south. Ravenhollow? Florence asked, fear spiking. Unknown. But whoever they are, they're about to learn that attacking Shadow Vale territory was a fatal mistake. Paul moved toward the door. Stay here. Lock yourself in. Don't open for anyone except me or Odessa. Paul. Stay here, Florence. Please. He left before she could argue. Florence locked the door and stood in the middle of her suite, listening to sounds of combat echoing through the pack house, wondering if Ravenhollow had come for her already. And wondering if Paul would survive defending her against wolves who wanted her dead or recaptured. The attack lasted 17 minutes. Florence counted every second while locked in her suite, listening to the sounds of combat, feeling through her newly active luminary senses as pack members were injured and healed and injured again. When silence finally fell, Florence waited with her heart in her throat. The knock on her door made her jump. Florence, it's Paul. You can open the door. She unlocked it to find Paul standing there, blood on his clothes but apparently uninjured. Behind him, guards were carrying away bodies. What happened? Florence asked. Ravenhollow sent a strike team. 12 wolves, all enhanced with dark magic, all specifically targeting you. Paul's voice was cold with fury. They didn't even try to disguise their intent. Just breached our perimeter and went straight for the pack house. Are they dead or detained? We lost 2 guards. Another 8 are injured but stable. Paul looked at Florence with an intensity that made her shiver. They knew exactly where you were, Florence. Knew which suite you were staying in. Someone gave them detailed intelligence about Shadow Vale's layout and your location. A spy? Or someone with access to information they shouldn't have. Paul gestured for her to follow. Come. I need you to examine the attackers we captured. Use your luminary sight to identify the dark magic they're carrying. I want to know who enhanced them and how. Florence followed Paul to the detention wing, where 3 injured Ravenhollow wolves were being held in reinforced cells. She approached the first one carefully, activating her luminary sight. The dark magic was immediately visible, black threads woven through the wolf's natural abilities, enhancing strength and speed but also corrupting something fundamental. This isn't just enhancement, Florence said, studying the magic structure. It's binding. Whoever cast this magic owns these wolves. They're not acting on their own will, they're being controlled. Can you remove it? Paul asked. I think so. But, Florence hesitated. If I remove the binding, they'll probably die. The dark magic is so deeply woven that pulling it out will take vital functions with it. Try anyway, Paul ordered. But don't risk yourself. If it's too dangerous, stop. Florence reached out with her luminary healing, trying to carefully unravel the binding magic. The moment she touched it, the binding reacted violently, lashing out at her, trying to corrupt her own abilities. Florence jerked back, gasping. What happened? Paul demanded. The binding is defensive. It's designed to attack anyone who tries to remove it. Florence's hands were shaking. Whoever placed this magic is very good. Very experienced. This isn't something a basic dark mage could do. Paul's expression was grim. Can you identify who cast it? Some kind of magical signature? Florence tried again, more carefully this time, just observing the magic without attempting to remove it. It's the same signature as the curse maintenance I traced earlier, she said. Whoever's keeping your family curse active is the same person who bound these wolves and sent them after me. Then we have our target, Paul said. We just need to identify them specifically. One of the captured wolves, a woman with wild eyes and foam at her mouth, suddenly spoke, her voice not quite her own. You cannot hide the luminary forever, Alpha King. She belongs to Ravenhollow. Return her or we will take her. She belongs to no one, Paul replied coldly. And if Ravenhollow wants war over this, I'll give them one they'll regret. The woman laughed, the sound wrong and hollow. You think Ravenhollow acts alone? You think your curse is the only plan set in motion? You're blind, Alpha King. You've been blind for years. Who are you? Paul demanded. Show yourself instead of speaking through puppets. You'll see me soon enough. When I've reclaimed what was stolen. When I've completed what was started. When the luminary fulfills her true purpose. The woman's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed. Florence checked her pulse. She's alive. But whoever was controlling her severed the connection. Take a blood sample, Paul ordered one of his medical staff. I want it analyzed for any magical residue. If we can identify the controller through their magic signature. An explosion rocked the detention wing. Paul shielded Florence instinctively as ceiling tiles rained down. Through the smoke and chaos, Florence saw a figure entering through the destroyed wall. Lysander Grimm. Ravenhollow's beta. The wolf who'd been circling Florence for 2 years. Hello, little healer, Lysander said, his voice carrying dark amusement. Did you really think you could run from me? Paul stepped between them, his alpha power radiating threat. You're on Shadowvale territory without permission. That's an act of war. I'm retrieving stolen property, Lysander corrected. Florence belongs to Ravenhollow. We acquired her legally 12 years ago. We invested resources in suppressing her abilities, in keeping her controlled and useful. And then you stole her. I escaped, Florence said, finding her voice despite her fear. I left on my own. Paul didn't steal me, I chose to leave. You're too stupid to make your own choices, Lysander sneered. You're a tool, Florence. A very valuable tool that we need for a very important purpose. And I'm taking you back whether you want to come or not. He moved with enhanced speed, not natural, definitely dark magic boosted, reaching for Florence. Paul met him halfway, and the fight was brutal. but Lysander had come prepared. His enhancements were stronger than the strike team's had been, and he fought with the desperation of someone who needed Florence back at any cost. Florence watched in horror as Paul was slowly driven back, taking damage that would have killed a normal alpha. She needed to help. Needed to do something. Her luminary abilities activated instinctively, not healing this time, but something else. She could see the dark magic enhancing Lysander, could see the structure of it. Could see how to disrupt it. Florence reached out with her power, targeting the enhancement magic directly. And pulled. Lysander screamed as his enhancements shattered, the dark magic ripping away from his system violently. He collapsed, weakened, and Paul was on him in seconds. That's impossible, Lysander gasped. Luminary abilities can't affect active magic. Only static curses. Apparently I'm special, Florence said, echoing Paul's words from their first meeting. Paul had Lysander subdued and restrained within moments. Guards swarmed in, securing the area, checking for additional threats. Take him to maximum security, Paul ordered. I want him interrogated. I want to know everything about who sent him, who's maintaining my curse, and what they want with Florence. As guards dragged Lysander away, he looked at Florence with hatred. You've doomed yourself. You can't break what you don't understand. And when the truth comes out, you'll wish you'd stayed suppressed and ignorant. What truth? Florence demanded. What are you talking about? But Lysander just laughed as he was hauled away. Paul turned to Florence, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? No. I'm okay. But Paul, what he said about me not understanding. We'll figure it out, Paul interrupted. But right now, we need to secure the pack house and verify there are no other threats. He signaled to Sable, who'd appeared with other pack members. Take Florence to my private quarters. Highest security. No one gets in without my personal authorization. Wait, your private quarters? Florence asked. The attack on the detention wing was coordinated with the strike team. They knew exactly when and where to hit for maximum chaos. Someone is feeding them detailed intelligence about Shadowvale operations. Paul's voice was grim. I don't know who I can trust anymore except people who've been with me since before your arrival. Sable is one of them. My private quarters are the most secure location in the pack house. You'll stay there until we identify the spy. Florence wanted to argue, but the truth was she was terrified. The attack had shown that Ravenhollow, or whoever was controlling them, was willing to commit open warfare to reclaim her. She followed Sable to Paul's quarters, a suite that was somehow both luxurious and practical. Make yourself comfortable, Sable said. Paul will be here as soon as he finishes damage control and interrogation. I'll be stationed outside if you need anything. Florence sat on the edge of Paul's bed, trying to process everything that had happened. Lysander had come for her personally. Had mentioned a truth she didn't understand. Had said she couldn't break what she didn't understand. What did that mean? Hours later, Paul returned. He looked exhausted, covered in blood from fighting, his alpha mask finally cracking to show the weight he'd been carrying. They're all dead, he said quietly. The captured strike team members. All three committed suicide the moment interrogation began. Some kind of dark magic failsafe that killed them before they could reveal information. And Lysander? Detained but alive. He's resisting interrogation, but he's not magically bound like the others were. We'll break him eventually. Paul sat heavily in a chair. But Florence, we have a serious problem. The spy? Worse. The blood analysis from the captured wolves came back. The dark magic signature matches samples I've had on file from 3 years ago when a Shadowvale pack member died from curse magic. Florence felt cold. You're saying the person maintaining your curse and the person who sent the strike team are the same entity who's been operating inside Shadowvale for years. Who has access to pack intelligence? Who's been feeding information to Ravenhollow while slowly killing me through curse maintenance? Paul's eyes met hers. We have a traitor. Someone highly placed enough to know about you, about security protocols, about everything. Who? I don't know yet. But we're going to find out. Paul's voice was cold determination. Because whoever they are, they just committed an act of war against their own alpha. And I don't tolerate traitors. Florence looked at this alpha king who'd been waiting for her at the border, who'd protected her through suppression's removal and attacks, who was now hunting a traitor in his own pack. What do you need me to do? She asked. Stay alive, Paul said simply. Stay hidden. Let me handle the investigation. And when I've identified the traitor, I'll need you to use your luminary abilities to confirm they're the one maintaining the curse. And then? And then we remove them. Break their connection to the curse. And finally start getting answers about why our lives have been manipulated for over a decade. Florence nodded. Okay. I'll stay hidden. But Paul? After we deal with the traitor, I want to know the truth Lysander mentioned. Whatever it is that I don't understand about myself. We'll find that truth together, Paul promised. No more secrets. No more manipulation. Just answers. But as Florence settled into Paul's quarters for what might be days of hiding, she couldn't shake Lysander's words. You can't break what you don't understand. What didn't she understand about herself? And why did finding out feel more dangerous than any attack Ravenhollow could launch? So Florence accidentally discovered she can disrupt active dark magic, not just static curses. Ability upgrade unlocked. Used her new power to save Paul from Lysander, who came to personally retrieve his stolen property. Damsel saved the prince, and learned there's a highly placed traitor in Shadowvale who's been maintaining Paul's curse while feeding intelligence to Ravenhollow, trust issues intensifying. Also, she's now hiding in Paul's private quarters, which seems like it should create some romantic tension, but they're both too busy dealing with assassination attempts and curse conspiracies to notice. Subscribe immediately, because what comes after involves the traitor revealing himself to be way more personal than anyone expected. Paul's investigation took 3 days. 3 days of Florence hiding in his private quarters, only seeing Sable and Odessa for company. 3 days of Paul returning late each night, exhausted from interrogations and magical analysis. On the 4th day, Paul entered his quarters with an expression Florence had never seen before, betrayal mixed with cold fury. I found the traitor, he said quietly. Who? Thaddeus Blackwood. My third in command. Someone I've known since childhood. Someone I trusted with pack security and sensitive intelligence. Paul's voice was tight with controlled rage. He's been maintaining the curse for 7 years. Since before my father died. Florence felt sick. How did you find him? Blood magic analysis from the strike team matched samples we took from all high-ranking pack members 3 years ago during a health screening. Thaddeus's magical signature was all over the dark magic bindings. Paul sat heavily. I confronted him an hour ago. He confessed to everything. Why? Why would he betray you? Because Ravenhollow's alpha, Dorian Ashcroft, is his brother. Thaddeus was planted in Shadowvale 20 years ago to ensure the curse remained active and to feed intelligence to Ravenhollow when needed. The implications hit Florence. Ravenhollow and Shadowvale are connected. This isn't just about your curse or my suppression, it's a coordinated conspiracy between both packs. Deeper than that, Paul said grimly. Thaddeus revealed something else. Something about you that explains why Ravenhollow went to such lengths to suppress you. Florence's heart hammered. What? 12 years ago, Ravenhollow didn't just acquire an orphan. They acquired the infant daughter of their previous alpha, the one Dorian Ashcroft overthrew in a coup. Paul's eyes were intense. You're not just luminary, Florence. You're Ravenhollow's legitimate alpha heir. The one Dorian needed to eliminate but couldn't without drawing attention from other packs. The world tilted. That's not possible, Florence whispered. I'm nobody. I've always been nobody. You've been hidden, Paul corrected. Your parents were Ravenhollow's alpha pair. They had luminary bloodline, rare even then. Dorian Ashcroft wanted their power and their territory. So he orchestrated a coup, killed your parents, and sold you to loyalists who suppressed your abilities and hid you in plain sight. Lysander knew, Florence realized. That's why he wanted to mate me. Not just for luminary abilities but for legitimate claim to Ravenhollow's alpha position. Exactly. If Lysander mated you, he'd have claim to your bloodline and territory by extension. Dorian would retain actual control, but Lysander would be the public face of legitimate succession. Florence's mind was racing. And the curse on your family? Connected. Dorian placed it 30 years ago, not because of some rejected witch, that was a lie. He cursed Shadowvile's alpha bloodline to weaken us politically, to ensure we'd never have stable leadership long enough to investigate Ravenhollow's coup. So everything, my suppression, your curse, the traitor in your pack, it's all Dorian Ashcroft's conspiracy to control both territories? Yes, Paul confirmed. And now that you've escaped and I've discovered the truth, he's desperate. That's why the attacks escalated. Why Lysander came personally. Dorian is running out of time to reclaim you before I can use your luminary abilities to break the curse and expose his entire conspiracy. What happens now? Now I've called a territory summit. Every major alpha in the region. I'm bringing charges against Dorian Ashcroft for conspiracy, murder, and curse maintenance across 2 generations. Paul's voice was steel. And you're going to testify about what Ravenhollow did to you. About the suppressions, the abuse, the forced blood donations. About being the legitimate heir they tried to destroy. They'll kill me before I can testify, Florence said. Not if I can help it. And Florence? Paul's expression softened fractionally. You're not alone in this anymore. You have Shadowvale backing you. You have me protecting you. And soon, you'll have your birthright back. I don't want Ravenhollow, Florence said immediately. Even if I am the legitimate heir, I don't want to rule the pack that destroyed my family and tortured me for 12 years. Then we'll discuss alternatives after Dorian is removed from power. But first, we need to break the curse. Without Thaddeus maintaining it, the magic will destabilize. This is our best chance to remove it completely before it consumes me. Florence nodded. Let's do it. They worked through the night. Florence used her luminary abilities to trace every thread of curse magic, identifying which connections were maintained by Thaddeus and which were original curse structure. Paul assisted, providing his alpha power to boost Florence's perception and protect her from backlash. I can see the curse's origin point, Florence said, her luminary sight showing her dark magic woven decades ago. It's anchored to a physical object. Something Dorian used as a focus when he placed the curse. Can you destroy it remotely? No. I'd need to find the object and break it physically while simultaneously purifying the curse magic. Florence studied the structure. But Paul, if I break this wrong, the backlash could kill you. The curse has been feeding on your alpha power for your entire life. Removing it improperly will rip out too much of your essence. Then do it properly, Paul said with absolute trust. I believe in your abilities, Florence. Florence took a deep breath and began the most complex healing she'd ever attempted. She carefully unraveled cursed threads, purifying dark magic as she went. Identified the anchor point, a bone fetish hidden somewhere in Ravenhollow territory that Dorian had used to cast the original curse. I can't destroy the physical anchor from here, Florence said. But I can sever its connection to you. It'll leave Dorian's curse active but unattached. He won't be able to re-establish the link without recasting the entire curse from scratch. Do it, Paul ordered. Florence pulled. The curse fought back violently, trying to maintain its hold. Paul screamed as dark magic lashed through him, trying to take his alpha power with it. But Florence's luminary abilities were stronger. She purified as she pulled, removing corruption while leaving Paul's essence intact. With a final surge of power, the curse connection severed completely. Paul collapsed, gasping, free from the curse that had been killing him since birth. Is it gone? He managed. The connection is broken, Florence confirmed, exhausted from the effort. The curse can't feed on you anymore. You'll live past 40, Paul. Your bloodline is finally free. Through their now familiar bond formed through weeks of healing sessions, Florence felt Paul's overwhelming relief. Thank you, he said quietly. You saved my life. Saved my bloodline. Saved everything. We're not done yet, Florence replied. Dorian still has the anchor. He could try to curse you again or curse someone else. We need to destroy it completely. Then we will, Paul promised. At the territory summit. In front of witnesses. We'll expose everything Dorian has done and eliminate his ability to hurt anyone ever again. The territory summit was held on neutral ground, a massive conference facility designed for interpack politics. 23 alphas attended, representing every major pack in the Northern Territories. Florence stood beside Paul as he presented evidence, Thaddeus's confession, recorded before the traitor was executed for his crimes, blood magic analysis proving Dorian's involvement, documentation of the coup that killed Florence's parents 12 years ago. And Florence's own testimony about the suppressions, the abuse, the systematic destruction of a legitimate alpha heir. Dorian Ashcroft sat in the defendant's section, his expression carved from stone, denying everything. These are fabrications, Dorian said calmly. Alpha King Paul is attempting to discredit Ravenhollow to justify an illegal invasion. Florence Marion is no heir. She's a disturbed girl who was given shelter by my pack and then ran away when we couldn't meet her unrealistic expectations. Then explained the luminary abilities she demonstrated by breaking the curse you placed on my bloodline, Paul challenged. I placed no curse. The Perez bloodline has been naturally weak for generations. If Florence managed to strengthen Alpha Paul through her healing, that's fortunate but proves nothing about my alleged involvement. The assembled alphas murmured. This was turning into he said, she said rather than clear evidence. I can prove it, Florence said quietly. Everyone turned to her. You said I can't demonstrate that you're maintaining the curse because it's been broken. But I can demonstrate the physical anchor you used to cast it. Florence stepped forward. You're wearing it right now. The bone fetish you used as the curse focus, you made it into a pendant after my parents died. You've worn it for 12 years as a trophy. Dorian's hand moved unconsciously to the pendant around his neck, a small bone carved with symbols, hanging from a leather cord. This is a family heirloom, Dorian said. Nothing more. Then you won't mind if I examine it with my luminary sight, Florence challenged. Dorian's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been fear. I don't submit to examinations by unstable healers. The Summit Council will examine it, another alpha interrupted, a woman named Celestine Ravencroft who'd been watching the proceedings with sharp attention. If the pendant is just a family heirloom as you claim, magical analysis will prove it. If it's a curse focus as Florence claims, that will prove conspiracy. Dorian had no choice. Refusing examination would look like admission of guilt. He removed the pendant and handed it to the Summit Council's neutral mage examiner. The mage held it carefully, running diagnostic magic across the bone. "This is a curse focus," the mage said, their voice carrying across the silent hall. "Specifically designed to anchor long-term dark magic to a bloodline. The signature matches the samples provided by Alpha King Paul from the curse that was affecting his family." The hall erupted. Dorian tried to run. He made it to the door before Summit guards tackled him, securing him with magic-suppressing restraints. "Dorian Ashcroft," Celestine pronounced, "you are found guilty of illegal curse casting, conspiracy to commit murder, and coup against a legitimate Alpha bloodline. Your pact territory is forfeit. Your position as Alpha is stripped. And you will face execution for crimes against werewolf society." Dorian struggled against the restraints, his composure finally breaking. "You can't do this. Ravenhollow is mine. I built it from nothing after the old bloodline failed." "You stole it," Florence said quietly. "From my parents. From me. And now justice is finally being served." As guards dragged Dorian away to await execution, the Summit turned to the question of what would happen to Ravenhollow Pack. "The legitimate heir is present," Celestine observed. "Florence Marion, legally Florence Ashcroft by birth, is the rightful Alpha of Ravenhollow territory." "I don't want it," Florence said immediately. "I have no connection to that pack beyond trauma. I won't rule people who spent 12 years abusing me." "Then the territory falls under Summit administration until a new Alpha can be selected," another Alpha suggested. "Or," Paul said carefully, "Ravenhollow could be absorbed into Shadowvale territory. Its adjacent land would strengthen both packs' security, and would ensure that anyone who participated in Dorian's conspiracy is properly identified and removed." "That would make Shadowvale the largest pack territory in the north," someone objected. "Potentially destabilizing the power balance. Or it would create stability by removing a pack that's been operating under corrupt leadership for over a decade," Paul countered. "I'm not asking for a gift. I'm asking for permission to clean up a mess that's affected my own pack for 2 generations." After much debate, the Summit voted to allow Shadowvale to absorb Ravenhollow territory, with the condition that Florence, as the legitimate heir, had to officially approve the transfer. "Do you approve of this arrangement?" Celestine asked Florence formally. Florence thought about it. Thought about the pack that had tortured her, that had killed her parents, that had tried to destroy her. Then thought about the innocent pack members who'd had no choice in Dorian's leadership. Who deserved better than continued punishment for one Alpha's crimes. "I approve," Florence said. "On the condition that any pack member who was complicit in the suppressions or abuse is removed from position and banned from pack territory. Everyone else gets the choice to stay under Shadowvale leadership or leave peacefully to join other packs." "Agreed," Paul said immediately. "Then it's settled," Celestine pronounced. "Ravenhollow territory is absorbed into Shadowvale. Dorian Ashcroft awaits execution. And Florence Marion is recognized as the legitimate heir who chose to relinquish claim in favor of consolidation." The Summit ended. Florence and Paul returned to Shadowvale as rulers of expanded territory and survivors of a conspiracy that had controlled both their lives. "How do you feel?" Paul asked as they drove back. "Relieved. Exhausted. Still processing that I'm apparently alpha-blooded and didn't know for 24 years. Florence looked at him. "How do you feel?" "Free," Paul said simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm not dying. Not living under curse. Not watching everything I build knowing it'll be destroyed when the curse takes me." His voice was quiet. "You gave me that, Florence. You gave me a future." "We gave each other futures," Florence corrected. "You're the one who waited at the border. Who offered me choice instead of just taking what you needed? Who protected me while I learned what I really was? They drove in comfortable silence for a while. What happens now? Florence asked. We've broken the curse, exposed the conspiracy, and absorbed Ravenhollow. What's next? Now we rebuild, Paul said. We integrate 2 packs. We root out remaining conspiracy members. We established new leadership in former Ravenhollow territory. He glanced at her. And we figure out what we are to each other beyond Cursebreaker and Cursebearer. Florence's heart skipped. What do you want us to be? I want, Paul said carefully, to explore whether what I feel for you is gratitude for saving my life or something deeper. I want to give you time to discover who you are now that you're free from suppression and trauma. He paused. I want you to have the choice I never gave you by waiting at that border. The choice to stay or go. To build a life with me or build one separately. And if I choose to stay? Then we take it slowly. Learn each other without crisis forcing us together. Build something real instead of just convenient. Paul's voice was sincere. You deserve that, Florence. After everything you've survived, you deserve to make choices about your future that aren't dictated by conspiracy or curse or desperation. Florence felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. For understanding that I need time. Take all the time you need, Paul said. I've already waited years for you. I can wait longer. 6 months after the Territory Summit, Florence stood in what had been Ravenhollow's pack house, now renamed Shadowmere Hall, the secondary administrative center for expanded Shadowvale territory. The integration had been challenging but successful. Half of former Ravenhollow members chose to stay under Shadowvale leadership. The other half transferred peacefully to other packs. Lysander Grimm had been executed alongside Dorian for his role in the conspiracy. Thaddeus Blackwood's entire family had been investigated and removed from positions of power. And Florence had spent 6 months discovering who she was beyond trauma and suppression. She'd trained extensively with Odessa, mastering luminary abilities until she could heal with precision and purify dark magic with confidence. She'd worked with Paul to establish new leadership in former Ravenhollow territory, ensuring innocent pack members weren't punished for Dorian's crimes. She'd made friends. Had built a life. Had slowly transformed from the terrified girl running through the forest into someone confident in her power and place. Paul found her in Shadowmere Hall's gardens, a space she'd helped redesign to honor her parents' memory. I've been looking for you, he said. I've been thinking, Florence replied. About? About the offer you made 6 months ago. To take time. To figure out what we are to each other. Florence turned to face him. I think I've figured it out. And I want to stay. Not just in Shadowvale, but with you. Build something together. Florence's voice was steady. I know it started with curses and conspiracies. But what have we built since? That's real. And I don't want to walk away from it. Paul's relief was palpable. Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we formally bond as mates, there's no going back. I'm sure, Florence said. You waited for me at that border like you knew I'd come. Gave me choice when you could have just taken what you needed. Protected me while I learned who I really was. That's not just gratitude, Paul. That's love, Paul finished. I love you, Florence. Have loved you since long before I should have. Probably from the moment I felt your healing magic through the pack bond and realized you were real. I love you too, Florence said. Even though you're dramatically overprotective and have a terrible habit of taking on everyone's burdens yourself and sometimes forget to actually rest like a normal person. Paul laughed. I'll work on that. You'd better. Because I'm planning to keep you alive for a very long time now that the curse is broken. Florence stepped closer. So, how do we do this? The formal bonding? We can make it as simple or elaborate as you want. Traditional ceremony with the whole pack witnessing, or private ritual with just us and close friends. Private, Florence decided. I've had enough of being on display for political purposes. This should be about us. Private it is, Paul agreed. The bonding ceremony took place under a full moon in Shadowvile's sacred grove. Only Odessa, Sable, and Paul's beta Hadrian attended as witnesses. The ritual was ancient, blood and oath and the formal recognition of mate bonds that had been growing between them for months. When it was done, Florence felt the connection snap into place with absolute certainty. Paul was hers. She was his. And they'd face whatever came next together. How does it feel? Paul asked. Like coming home, Florence said honestly. Like all those years of running and hiding were leading me here. To you. To this. The night you ran away, Paul said quietly, I stood at that border and prayed I was right. That you'd choose to escape. That you'd trust me enough to accept help. That I wasn't condemning you to worse danger by offering you choice instead of just taking you. You were right, Florence assured him. About all of it. I did run. I did trust you. And you didn't condemn me, you saved me. We saved each other, Paul corrected. You broke my curse. I helped you break free from suppression. We exposed the conspiracy together. Neither of us could have done it alone. Florence leaned against him, feeling the mate bond humming between them, solid and real and chosen. So what happens now? She asked. We've defeated the bad guys, broken the curses, and absorbed the territory. What's our next adventure? Now, Paul said, we just live. Build our pack. Help people who need it. Maybe find other suppressed wolves who need someone to show them they're more than what others told them. That sounds perfect, Florence decided. And it was. Because the night she'd run away, Florence had been running from everything that hurt her. But she'd also been running toward everything she'd been meant to be. And Paul Perez, Alpha King of Shadowvale, had been waiting, not because he'd trapped her, but because he'd known she'd need someone there when she finally chose freedom. Sometimes destiny wasn't about fate forcing two people together. Sometimes it was about one person waiting patiently while another found the courage to run toward their future. And sometimes the Alpha King waiting at the border was exactly what the running wolf needed. The end. A woman ran away from an abusive pack expecting nothing but desperate survival, brave, found an Alpha King casually waiting at the border like he'd been tracking her escape for months, not creepy when you realize he was protecting her from a distance, discovered she's not just a weak healer but the legitimate alpha heir to a territory stolen through conspiracy, identity upgrade, helped break a generational curse while exposing a conspiracy that controlled two packs, heroic, and ended up bonded to the alpha who'd been waiting because he understood that choice matters more than convenience. Florence went from nobody healer to alpha heir who chose her own destiny, while Paul went from cursed Alpha King dying young to mate-bonded ruler of expanded territory who got his happy ending. This is what happens when running away turns out to be running toward exactly where you belong. Subscribe for more stories where the powerful alpha waiting isn't coincidence but careful planning, where running away means running toward destiny, where suppressed wolves turn out to be legendary bloodlines, and where sometimes the best love stories start with someone waiting patiently while you find the courage to choose them.